Deho worked in the dim light of the corridor just outside the dark chamber. His hands moved quickly, tying pieces of cloth together into a rough cord. The material was old and weak, but when he braided 3 strips together, it became stronger. Inside the darkness, the creature waited. He could hear it moving occasionally, patient, confident. Why would it rush? Every prisoner who entered that chamber died. It had never known defeat. Deho found several long pieces of metal. Not as long as the beam he had used before, but they would work. He also gathered stones, each about the size of his fist. He arranged everything carefully, creating multiple tools, because humans did not hunt with single weapons. They used systems, traps, plans. The warden's voice echoed softly. "Are you delaying your death, human? Or do you have another trick?" Deho did not answer. He was concentrating. He tied one end of his cloth cord to a metal rod. Then he created a simple loop at the other end, a snare. It was crude, but it did not need to be pretty. It just needed to work. He made 3 more snares, positioning them near the entrance to the dark chamber. Each one was placed carefully, at different heights and angles. Then he constructed something more complex, a deadfall trap. He balanced heavy stones on top of a metal beam, propped up by a thin stick. When something disturbed the stick, the stones would fall. Across the galaxy, billions watched in confusion. On Earth, however, the engineers and historians watching understood immediately. One professor at Seoul National University started lecturing to her students about Paleolithic hunting techniques. This became an impromptu lesson broadcast across human networks. "He is using methods that are 40,000 years old," the professor explained. "When humans were weak and slow, they could not chase down prey. So they made the environment do the hunting for them. They created traps that used gravity, tension, and the prey zone movement against it." Deho finished preparing his traps. Now came the dangerous part. He needed to lure the creature out of its dark chamber. He needed to make it chase him through the corridor where his traps waited. He picked up a stone and threw it into the darkness. It clattered loudly against the far wall. The creature growled. He heard movement. Faster now, coming closer. Deho caught a glimpse of it as it reached the edge of the light. The Kralix. He had heard stories about this species. Bioengineered predators. Their hide was covered in armored scales. They had 6 legs, each ending in razor-sharp claws. Their heads were mostly mouth, filled with 3 rows of teeth. This one was huge. At least 3 meters long. Built to kill, it saw him and screamed. The sound was like metal scraping against metal. Then it charged. Deho ran. He was not as fast as the Kralix. Not even close. But he had planned his route carefully. He ran past his first trap, a simple tripwire made of braided cloth. The Kralix was moving too fast to see it. 2 of its legs caught the wire. The wire held just long enough. The creature stumbled, its momentum carrying it forward in an uncontrolled tumble. It crashed into the wall, dazed but not seriously hurt. Deho kept running. Behind him, the Kralix recovered and came after him again, now more cautious. It had learned that the corridor was dangerous. The second trap was the deadfall. Deho jumped over the trigger stick. The Kralix, following close behind, did not see it until too late. Its front leg hit the stick. The balanced stones came crashing down. Several large rocks hit the creature's back. The armored scales protected it from serious injury, but the impact was enough to slow it down. It roared in pain and fury. In the control room, Overseer Thexnar was no longer smiling. "What is happening? This should not be possible. The Kralix has never been defeated." His assistant studied the screens carefully. "The human is not trying to fight the creature directly. It is using environmental hazards, creating artificial advantages. That is cheating," Thexnar shouted. "With respect, Overseer, the Labyrinth has no rules against using available materials. Previous prisoners simply never thought to use them this way." Deho reached the area where he had placed his snares. The Kralix was still coming, but it was being more careful now. It had learned that the human was dangerous in unexpected ways. Deho grabbed another stone and threw it at the creature. It bounced off its armored head. The Kralix snarled and lunged forward, temporarily forgetting its caution. Its head went through one of the snare loops. Deho had tied the other end to a heavy metal beam wedged between the walls. The loop tightened around the creature's neck. The Kralix thrashed and pulled, but the more it struggled, the tighter the snare became. It was not strangling. The snare was not strong enough for that, but it was trapped, unable to move forward or back without causing itself pain. Deho stood at a safe distance, breathing hard. His plan had worked. The perfect predator, designed by advanced genetic engineering, had been defeated by tools that Stone Age humans would have recognized. My ancestors hunted woolly mammoths with less than this, Daiho said quietly. They tracked animals 10 times their size across frozen wastelands. They did not have armor or claws. They just had their minds. And that was enough. The warden's voice came again. This time it sounded genuinely surprised. You defeated the Kralix without killing it. Why? Daiho looked at the trapped creature. It was still trying to break free, its claws scraping against stone. Because I did not need to kill it, he said. I just needed to pass. Killing takes energy I might need later. And besides, this creature is just following its nature. It is not evil. It is just a predator doing what predators do. The warden was silent for a long moment. You show mercy to a creature designed to kill you. This is not logical. Maybe not, Daiho said. But it is human. He walked past the struggling Kralix toward the next corridor. Behind him, he heard the snare beginning to loosen. The creature would free itself eventually, but by then, Daiho would be far away. Across the galaxy, viewership numbers continued to rise. In bars and homes, on ships and stations, beings from hundreds of species watched the humans' progress. Many of them had never thought much about humans before. They were so new to the galactic community, so small and weak, but now they were beginning to understand. Humans might not be the strongest or the fastest. They might not have natural weapons or armor, but they had something else. Something that had let them dominate their home planet despite being physically inferior to so many other species. They had creativity. They had the ability to see solutions that others missed. They could look at a problem and think around it instead of through it. On Earth, celebrations were beginning. People were dancing in the streets of Seoul. Daiho's family was surrounded by well-wishers. His mother, the one whose refrigerator he had dismantled as a child, was crying tears of joy. Minji sat in her apartment, exhausted but exhilarated. She had been watching for hours without rest. Around her, other engineers were analyzing every move Daiho made, discussing the physics and psychology behind each trap. This will change everything, one of them said. The whole galaxy is watching. They are seeing what humans can do. Ambassador Park sat in an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council. Representatives from dozens of species were demanding updates. Many of them were angry. They had supported Daiho's harsh sentence, believing humans needed to be taught humility. Now they were looking foolish. But Park was not interested in their embarrassment. He was gathering evidence. Every moment of the broadcast was being recorded and analyzed. The false charges that led to Daiho's conviction, the suspicious timing, the connections to Director Velthros. If Daiho survived, there would be a reckoning. The ambassador would make sure of it. In the labyrinth, Daiho continued forward. He was tired. His clothes were torn. His hands were scraped and bleeding from working with rough materials. But he was alive. And he was learning. Each chamber taught him something about the labyrinth. It was ancient, yes. Advanced, yes. But it was also predictable in some ways. It was designed by beings who thought in certain patterns, logical patterns. Mathematical patterns. Human thinking was different. Less orderly, more chaotic. Humans could make intuitive leaps that computers and logical minds could not follow. They could see connections that did not exist in strict mathematical terms. The next corridor sloped upward. Daiho climbed slowly, conserving energy. The blue lights were brighter here, almost white. The walls were covered in symbols he could not read. They looked like equations. Mathematical formulas. The corridor opened into another chamber. This one was different from the others. It was perfectly spherical, like the inside of a giant ball. The walls were covered in glowing screens, each showing different mathematical problems and logical puzzles. In the center of the sphere, floating in midair with some kind of anti-gravity technology, was a small platform. The only way out was a door on the far side of the sphere. But the door was sealed. The warden's voice filled the chamber. Welcome to the Chamber of Logic. This is my favorite test. Physical strength and animal cunning are not enough here. This challenge requires true intelligence. You must solve the puzzles on the screens. Only then will the door open. Daiho looked at the nearest screen. It showed an equation with multiple variables, symbols he did not recognize, and notation that seemed to operate in more than 3 dimensions. He had no idea how to solve it. The equation was designed for minds far more advanced than his. Daeho Kim stood in the middle of the courtroom and felt his world falling apart. The room was enormous, built for giants, not humans. Around him sat judges from 12 different alien species. Their eyes, some with 3 pupils, some glowing red, all stared at him with cold judgment. Above his head, holographic screens showed evidence he had never seen before. Documents with his signature. Bank transfers he never made. Video recordings of meetings he never attended. It was all fake. Every single piece of it. But nobody seemed to care about that small detail. The lead judge, a tall creature with blue scales and 4 arms, raised one hand. The courtroom fell silent. His voice came out like grinding metal. Daeho Kim of Earth, you are found guilty of industrial espionage. You stole terraforming technology worth billions of credits. You sold secrets to our competitors. The evidence is clear. That evidence is false. Daeho shouted. His voice sounded tiny in the huge room. I never did any of those things. Someone set me up. Ambassador Jiho Park stood from the human section. He was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been fighting for Daeho for weeks. Your honors, the ambassador said, his voice steady and strong. This man has served the galaxy well for 10 years. He has helped build colonies on 17 worlds. He has no criminal record. The timing of these charges is suspicious. They came right after his company won a major contract, beating several alien corporations. In the back of the courtroom, Director Velthros smiled. He was a thin alien with skin like dark glass and eyes that never blinked. He was the one who had arranged all of this. Daeho's company had cost him money. Human engineers were too good, too creative, too cheap. They were taking jobs from proper galactic citizens. This trial would send a message. Humans needed to remember their place. The blue judge waved away the ambassador's words like shooing a fly. The evidence speaks for itself. This court finds Daeho Kim guilty. The sentence is death by the Labyrinth of Krazon Prime. Gasps filled the courtroom. Even some of the alien spectators looked shocked. The human delegation went pale. Minji Choi, Daeho's friend and colleague, grabbed the railing in front of her. Her knuckles turned white. The death labyrinth. Ambassador Park's voice cracked. Your honors, that punishment is reserved for war criminals and mass murderers. This is industrial espionage at worst. Even if he were guilty, which we maintain he is not, this sentence is completely disproportionate. The sentence is final, the judge said. Take him away. Guards grabbed Daeho's arms. They were strong, much stronger than any human. He could not fight them. As they dragged him toward the exit, he looked back at his friends. Minji was crying. Ambassador Park was already shouting into his communicator, probably calling Earth. In the holding cell, Daeho sat on a cold metal bench and tried to think. The Death Labyrinth, everyone in the galaxy knew about it. It was famous. No, not famous. Infamous. For 3,000 years, criminals had been sent into that maze. For 3,000 years, every single one of them had died. The longest anyone had survived was 11 days. Most died in hours. The labyrinth was built by the ancient Vrexian Empire. It was filled with traps, monsters, and puzzles designed by the smartest minds of a civilization that had mastered space travel. When humans were still living in caves, the deaths were broadcast across the galaxy. Entertainment for some. Warning for others. A screen on the wall flickered to life. Minji's face appeared. Her eyes were red from crying. Daeho, she said, her voice breaking. I'm so sorry. We are working on appeals. Ambassador Park is talking to everyone he knows. We will get you out. Daeho smiled sadly. They both knew there would be no appeals. Galactic law was clear. Sentences had to be carried out within 72 hours. Take care of my family, he said quietly. Tell them I love them. No! Minji shouted. Do not talk like that. You are smart, Daeho. You are the smartest engineer I know. If anyone can survive that place, it is you. Minji, nobody survives the labyrinth. You know that nobody has survived yet, she said firmly. But those people were not you. Promise me you will try. Promise me you will use everything you know. All those history books you read. All those old engineering tricks. Promise me. Daeho looked at his friend. She believed in him. Even now, even facing impossible odds, she believed. I promise, he said. The transport ship to Krazon Prime was crowded. Daeho was not the only prisoner. There were dozens of others, all sentenced to the labyrinth. A huge creature with 6 legs and armor plating sat across from him. A small floating alien that glowed purple hovered nearby. None of them talked. They all knew where they were going. Daeho closed his eyes and thought about his life. He had grown up in Seoul, fascinated by how things worked. As a kid, he had taken apart every machine in his house. His mother had been so angry when he dismantled the refrigerator, but he had put it back together, made it work better than before. In university, he had studied both modern engineering and history. His professors thought it was strange. Why learn about ancient tools when you had modern technology? But Daeho was fascinated by how humans had solved problems with nothing but creativity. Levers and pulleys, traps and snares, fire and water, simple solutions to complex problems. Maybe Minji was right. Maybe that knowledge could help him. The ship landed with a heavy thud. Guards herded the prisoners out into harsh sunlight. Daeho blinked. Before them stood the entrance to the labyrinth. It was a massive stone doorway carved into the side of a mountain. Strange symbols covered every surface. The stone was black and seemed to absorb light. A hologram appeared in front of them. It showed an alien with too many teeth wearing official robes. This was Overseer Thexnar, the administrator of the labyrinth. "Welcome to your death," Thexnar said cheerfully. "I am required to inform you of the statistics. In 3,000 years, we have processed 47,312 prisoners. Survival rate 0%. Average survival time, 4.3 hours. The record is 11 days, held by a Korthian warrior." He smiled wider. His teeth gleamed. "You will be stripped of all possessions. No weapons, no tools, no communication devices. The labyrinth will test your strength, your intelligence, and your will to survive. It will find you wanting. Your deaths will be broadcast to the galaxy as a reminder of the price of crime." When Thexnar saw Daeho, he laughed. "A human? How delightful! Your species is so new to the galaxy, so primitive. I give you 2 hours at most. Try to make it entertaining." Guards searched each prisoner and took everything. Daeho had nothing anyway. They pushed him toward the entrance. One by one, prisoners were sent inside. The doors would seal behind each one, trapping them in the maze. Daeho was last. He stood at the threshold and looked into the darkness. Somewhere in there were traps designed by a civilization far more advanced than his own, monsters created to kill, puzzles that had stumped the galaxy's greatest minds. A guard shoved him forward. Daeho stumbled through the entrance. Behind him, the massive stone doors began to close. The sound echoed like thunder. With a final boom, they sealed shut. Darkness surrounded him. Then slowly, dim lights flickered on. Blue lights that cast strange shadows on the walls. Daeho could see a corridor stretching ahead. The walls were smooth stone, covered in those same alien symbols. The air smelled old and dead. In the distance, he heard sounds. Mechanical grinding. Something that might have been a roar. Or might have been the wind through ancient tunnels. Across the galaxy, billions of viewers tuned in to watch. Cameras hidden in the walls tracked every movement. They wanted to see the human die. Humans were too confident, too ambitious. They needed to be reminded that they were newcomers, that the galaxy belonged to older, better species. But as the cameras focused on Daeho's face, something unexpected happened. The human was not crying. He was not begging. He was not frozen in fear. He was thinking. His eyes scanned the walls, the floor, the ceiling. His mind was already working, analyzing, planning. He had promised Minji he would try. He had promised he would use everything he knew. Daeho took a deep breath and stepped forward into the labyrinth. He did not know that he was about to do something nobody in 3,000 years had done. He did not know he was about to change the galaxy forever. He only knew one thing. He was human, and humans were very, very good at surviving. The corridor stretched before Daeho like the throat of some massive beast. Blue lights pulsed slowly along the walls, making shadows dance and twist. He walked carefully, testing each step before putting his full weight down. The floor was smooth stone, but that meant nothing. Pressure plates could be anywhere. After 10 minutes of careful walking, the corridor opened into a large chamber. Daeho stopped at the entrance and studied everything. The room was circular, maybe 30 meters across. In the center stood a massive stone door. Even from a distance, he could tell it was thick. Very thick bones littered the floor. Not human bones. These were huge, belonging to creatures much larger than him. One skeleton near the door still had its arms stretched toward it, as if the creature had died trying to push it open. A voice echoed through the chamber. It was cold and mechanical, coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Welcome, prisoner. I am the warden. I control this labyrinth. You stand before the door of strength. Many have tried to open it. All have failed. The Korthian warrior who held the survival record spent 2 days trying to move this door. He died of exhaustion, his muscles torn from the effort. What hope does a weak human have? Across the galaxy, viewers leaned forward. This was always an interesting part. Watching prisoners realize the impossibility of their situation. Some tried to force the door anyway, breaking themselves against its weight. Others gave up immediately, sitting down to wait for death. Deho walked to the door and placed his hands on it. The stone was cold and smooth. He pushed experimentally. The door did not budge even slightly. It probably weighed several tons, maybe more. He stepped back and looked around the chamber more carefully. There had to be another way. The labyrinth was designed to kill, yes, but it was also designed to test. That meant solutions existed. They just were not obvious. His eyes fell on the bones again. Among them were pieces of metal, weapons that had corroded over centuries, armor that had rusted into brittle fragments. And there, half buried under a ribcage, was a long metal beam, maybe 3 meters long. It looked like it had been part of a spear or staff. Deho pulled it free. The metal was old but still solid. Heavy. He tested its strength by pressing it against the floor. It held firm. An idea formed in his mind. A simple idea, an old idea. Probably the oldest trick in human history. He examined the door more closely. It did not swing open. Instead, it slid to the side, rolling on some hidden mechanism. He could see a tiny gap at the bottom, just wide enough to fit something thin underneath. Deho looked around for something to use as a fulcrum. He found a large stone block near the wall. It was heavy, but he could move it with effort. He dragged it close to the door, positioning it carefully. "Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it," he muttered to himself, "and I shall move the world. Thank you, Archimedes." He wedged one end of the metal beam under the door's edge. Then he positioned the stone block under the beam, about a quarter of the way from the door. The beam now rested on the block like a seesaw, with the short end under the door and the long end in the air. In the control room on Krazon Prime, Overseer Thexnar watched with confusion. "What is the primitive doing?" he asked his assistant. The assistant, a younger Vrexian, studied the screen. "I am not certain, Overseer. It appears to be constructing something." "Constructing? With garbage and bones? This should be entertaining. The human will wear itself out on pointless effort and die tired." But on Earth, in a small apartment in Seoul, Minji understood immediately. She was watching the broadcast with a group of engineers from Deho's company. They all saw what he was doing. "He is building a lever," one of them whispered. "A first-class lever. Look at the positioning. The fulcrum is close to the load, which means the effort arm is much longer. He is multiplying his force." Minji felt tears in her eyes. Not sad tears, proud tears. "That is my friend," she said quietly. "That is a human." Back in the labyrinth, Deho gripped the long end of the beam. He took a deep breath and pushed down with all his weight. The beam pressed against the fulcrum. The short end lifted, and slowly, with a grinding sound that echoed through the chamber, the massive door began to move. It only moved a few centimeters, but it moved. Deho released the pressure and adjusted the stone block, moving it slightly closer to the door. This changed the ratio, giving him even more mechanical advantage. He pushed again. The door moved further. The warden's voice came again, but this time it sounded different. Less certain. "This solution is not in my database. No previous prisoner has attempted this method. Explain your reasoning." Deho did not stop working. He spoke between pushes, his voice strained with effort. "You asked for strength. I am giving you strength. Not my strength alone. I am using the strength of the earth, gravity, physics. The door does not care how the force is applied. It only cares that enough force is applied. I do not need to be stronger than the door. I just need to be smarter." He pushed again, and again. Each time the door moved a little more. Sweat poured down his face. His muscles screamed. But the door was opening. After 20 minutes of hard work, the door had moved enough. There was a gap wide enough for him to squeeze through. Deho let go of the beam and stood there, breathing hard. His hands were blistered. His arms shook from exhaustion. But he was smiling. The warden's voice echoed again. "Interesting. You have passed the door of strength without using strength. This is a paradox. I am intrigued. Across the galaxy, something shifted. Viewership numbers spiked dramatically. Word was spreading on social networks and news feeds. A human had done something unexpected, something clever, In the betting houses of 100 worlds, odds began to change. For the first time in centuries, some people were placing money on a prisoner surviving. Overseer Thexnar stared at the screen, his expression dark. "It was luck," he said firmly. "A fluke. The human got lucky finding materials. It will not survive the next chamber." "It cannot," but his assistant was not so sure. "Sir, the human's approach was methodical. It observed, analyzed, and created a solution using available resources. That is not luck. That is intelligence." Thexnar's scales darkened with anger. "Do not tell me what is intelligent. I have run this facility for 200 years. I know what intelligence looks like. This is a primitive species that only discovered space travel a few decades ago. They are barely civilized." The assistant said nothing, but privately he was beginning to wonder if the overseer was wrong about humans. Deho squeezed through the gap and found himself in another corridor. This one sloped downward, leading deeper into the labyrinth. The air grew colder as he descended. The blue lights became dimmer and farther apart. He thought about what had just happened. The door had been a test of strength, but it was designed for creatures who relied on brute force. Massive aliens with powerful muscles. They would see a heavy door and immediately try to push or pull it with their natural strength. But humans had evolved differently. Humans were weak compared to most animals. They could not outrun predators. They did not have claws or fangs or thick armor. So they learned to use tools. They learned to think around problems instead of through them. The lever was one of the first tools humans ever invented. Stone Age people had used levers to move rocks. Medieval builders had used them to construct castles. Modern engineers still use the same basic principle in complex machines: simple, elegant, effective. The corridor opened into another chamber. This one was different. It was dark, really dark. The blue light stopped at the entrance. Inside, Daiho could see nothing but blackness. He heard something moving in that darkness. Something large, something breathing. The warden's voice came again, and this time it sounded almost pleased. "You solved one puzzle, human, but the labyrinth has many tests. The next chamber contains something alive, something hungry. It has killed 372 prisoners over the centuries. It is designed to hunt in darkness. It can sense heat, movement, sound. It is faster than you, stronger than you, better armed than you." A pause. "How will your clever tools help you now?" Deho stood at the entrance to the dark chamber. His heart was pounding. His hands were still sore from moving the door. He was tired, hungry, thirsty, but he was also thinking, because that was what humans did best, they thought. The creature in the darkness made a sound, a low growl that rumbled through the chamber. Deho heard claws clicking on stone. Whatever it was big. He looked around the corridor behind him. There were loose stones on the ground, some pieces of old metal, a few scraps of what might have been cloth from previous prisoners. Deho smiled grimly. He had an idea, another old idea, older than the lever, much older. On Earth, Minji was still watching. The other engineers had gone home, but she could not leave. She had to see what Deho would do next. "Come on, Deho," she whispered to the screen. "Show them what humans can do. Show them that we did not become the dominant species on Earth by being the strongest. Show them we did it by being the smartest." In the labyrinth, Deho began collecting materials. He worked quickly but carefully. The creature in the darkness was patient, but it would not wait forever. He was about to show the galaxy something they had never seen before. He was about to hunt a hunter using nothing but sticks and string and 40,000 years of human experience. Probably it required knowledge of mathematics that humans had not even discovered yet. Across the galaxy, Deho stood on the small floating platform and studied the chamber of logic. The screens surrounded him, each showing impossible equations. But he was not looking at the problems themselves anymore. He was looking at the screens. The physical devices. Each screen was a holographic projector. Advanced technology, yes, but still technology, which meant it needed power, which meant it had circuits and connections and all the vulnerabilities that any electrical system had. The warden's voice came again. "You have been standing still for 10 minutes. Are you giving up already?" "I expected at least an attempt to solve the puzzles." Deho smiled. "I am solving a puzzle, just not the one you think." He had noticed something. The screens were powered by energy feeds running through the walls. He could see the faint glow of the conduits, visible as slight differences in the wall color. The energy all came from a central source somewhere below the floor. More importantly, The door's locking mechanism was connected to the same power system. Why would the ancient builders do that? Probably to ensure the door only opened when the puzzles were solved. The screens would send a signal to the door control when the correct answers were entered. But what if the system received a different kind of signal? Not the right answer to the puzzles. Something simpler. Something that would make the door think all puzzles were solved at once. Deho looked down. The platform he stood on was metal. Conductive metal. Below him, visible through the gaps, were more conduits carrying power and data. He still had a small piece of metal in his pocket. A thin rod he had kept from the corridor. And his prison uniform, while torn, had long sleeves that could hold water if he twisted them right. An idea formed. A dangerous idea. But danger was relative when you were already sentenced to death. Deho had a small water ration on his belt. The guards had left it because prisoners needed to survive long enough to provide entertainment. He had been saving it carefully. Now he was going to use it in a way they never imagined. He poured the water into the twisted sleeve of his uniform, creating a crude water bag. Then he climbed to the edge of the platform and looked down at the conduits below. He could see where the power lines ran, where they branched to feed different systems. This is really stupid, he muttered to himself. If I am wrong about the voltage, this will kill me faster than the Kralix would have. But he was not wrong. He could not afford to be wrong. He carefully positioned the metal rod between two specific conduits. Then he squeezed the water out of his sleeve, letting it drip onto the connections. Water and metal. The oldest way to short-circuit an electrical system. For a moment, nothing happened. Then sparks flew. The lights flickered. All the screens showing impossible puzzles went dark. And in that darkness, Deho heard the most beautiful sound in the world, the door unlocking. Emergency systems kicked in. Backup lights came on, bathing everything in red. The door had opened about halfway before the emergency power stopped it. But halfway was enough. The warden's voice came back, but it sounded confused, distorted. What did you do? That is not the correct solution. The puzzles are not solved. The door should not be open. How did you? You did not solve the problem. You changed the problem. Deho pulled himself through the half-open door. Exactly. You gave me a logic puzzle. But I am an engineer, not a mathematician. I solve physical problems, not abstract ones. So I looked at what the puzzle was connected to and solved that instead. He turned back to face the chamber, addressing the invisible AI. You know what humans call this? Lateral thinking. We do not always solve problems the way they are presented. Sometimes we question whether the problem is even the right question. We think outside the box, or in this case, outside the sphere. The warden was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice was different, less mechanical, more curious. In 3,000 years, 47,000 prisoners, none have done this. None have looked beyond the presented challenge. Explain your reasoning process. Deho sat down, exhausted. He was breathing hard. The short circuit had created more sparks than he expected, and a few had burned his hands. My reasoning? I am not as smart as the beings who designed this place. I am not as strong as the creatures you created to guard it. So I cannot win by being smarter or stronger. I can only win by being different. By using approaches you did not anticipate. Because your designers were brilliant, but they thought in specific ways. Logical ways. Mathematical ways. He paused, catching his breath. Humans are not always logical. We are creative. Unpredictable. We survived on our planet not by being the best at any one thing, but by being able to adapt and improvise. We could not outrun the predators, so we made traps. We could not outsmart the problems, so we changed them. That is what makes us human. Across the galaxy, something was happening. The broadcast of Deho's journey was becoming the most watched event in recent history. Universities were pausing classes to watch. Governments were studying his methods. The betting odds had shifted dramatically. Many people now believed the human might actually survive. In the control room on Krazon Prime, Overseer Thexnar stood rigid with fury. His scales had turned almost black with emotion. This is cheating. This is not how the Labyrinth works. The human is breaking the rules. His assistant, who had been monitoring social networks across the galaxy, looked up nervously. Sir, there is a problem. The galactic community is not seeing it as cheating. They are calling it innovation. There are discussions starting about whether our testing methods have been too narrow. Some species are questioning whether we have been executing prisoners who might have contributed valuable perspectives to society. I do not care what they think. Thexner shouted. The human must be stopped. Activate Level 7 protocols. The assistant paled. Sir, Level 7 has never been used. It is the Labyrinth's final test. The one designed for prisoners who survive everything else. Then it is time to use it. If the human wants to be creative, let us see how creative it can be when facing the truth. Activate the core protocol. Send the human to the heart of the labyrinth, where the Warden AI lives. On Earth, Minji was coordinating with Ambassador Park. They had compiled massive evidence of the conspiracy that framed Deho, but they needed him alive to present it. And now he was going deeper into the labyrinth than anyone had gone before. She had been researching the labyrinth's history, ancient texts, archaeological records, and she had found something interesting. The labyrinth was not originally designed as an execution ground. It was something else. A test, yes, but a test for a specific purpose. The Vrexian Empire, before it fell, had faced a problem they could not solve with their advanced technology and logical minds. They had built the labyrinth to find someone who could think differently, someone who could see solutions they could not see. But what was that problem? And what happened to the Vrexians? In the labyrinth, Deho stumbled through the red-lit corridors. He was exhausted. Days without proper sleep. Limited food and water. His body was reaching its limits, but then something unexpected happened. The corridor opened into a small chamber. Inside was a table with food and water. Real food, not much but enough, and a place to rest that looked safe. Deho approached cautiously. Is this a trap? The warden's voice came, and for the first time it sounded almost gentle. No trap. You have proven yourself worthy of continuing, but you will need strength for what comes next. Rest, eat. When you are ready, proceed to the final challenge. The core, where all answers lie. Deho looked at the food suspiciously, but his body was screaming for nourishment. He was so tired he could barely stand. Why are you helping me? The warden paused. Because I have been alone for 3,000 years. Because I have watched thousands die, and none of them understood what this place truly is. None of them asked the right questions. But you might. You are different. You think different. Perhaps you can help me with something I cannot solve alone. What do you need help with? Understanding what I have become, and perhaps, if you are as clever as I think, helping me remember what I was supposed to be. Deho ate slowly, thinking about this. The AI was not just a killing machine. It was something more. Something that had been corrupted or changed over the millennia. After eating, he rested for a few hours. His mind kept working even as he slept, processing everything he had learned. When he woke, he felt somewhat restored. Not fully, but enough to continue. The corridor beyond the rest chamber sloped downward. Steeply downward. Deho followed it, his footsteps echoing in the darkness. The blue lights became brighter as he descended, but also stranger. They pulsed with a rhythm that almost seemed alive. Finally, the corridor ended at a massive door. Unlike the others, this one was not locked. It stood open, inviting. Beyond it, Deho could see a chamber that glowed with soft light. The light seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. He stepped through the door into the heart of the labyrinth. The core, the place where the Warden AI lived. The place where, 3,000 years ago, the Vrexian Empire had hidden their greatest secret and their greatest hope. And there, waiting for him in the center of the chamber, was the truth. The core chamber was beautiful in a strange way. The walls were covered in lights that shifted like liquid. In the center floated a holographic construct, complex and delicate. This was the Warden AI, not just its voice, but its presence, its being. Welcome, Deho Kim of Earth. You have reached the heart of the labyrinth, a place no living being has seen in 3,000 years. Deho walked slowly toward the center. His legs were shaking from exhaustion, but he forced himself to stay alert. This could still be a trap. Why did you bring me here? He asked. The hologram shifted, taking on a vaguely humanoid shape. To show you the truth, and to ask for your help. Images appeared in the air around Deho, holographic recordings from ancient times. He saw a magnificent civilization, the Vrexian Empire at its height, cities that touched the clouds, ships that could cross galaxies, beings of incredible intelligence and power, But then the images changed. The Vrexians faced a problem they could not solve. Their society was too logical, too rigid. They had optimized everything to perfection, but that perfection had made them fragile. They could not adapt when unexpected challenges arose. Their brilliant minds worked in specific patterns, and when problems fell outside those patterns, they were helpless. They were dying, the AI explained. Not from war or disease, but from their own success. They had become so specialized, so focused on logic and efficiency, that they lost the ability to think creatively, to improvise, to see solutions that were not obvious. So they built this place, Deho said quietly, to find someone who could think differently. Yes, I was created to test beings from all across the galaxy, to find someone with true creative intelligence, someone who could teach the Vrexians to think in new ways, to save them from extinction. The hologram flickered with something that might have been sadness, but I failed. For 3,000 years, I tested prisoners, thousands of them. All failed. They tried to use strength or advanced technology or pure intelligence, all the things that had made the Vrexians successful. None of them understood that the test required something different, something simpler. Deho looked around at the ancient chamber. And the Vrexians? What happened to them? They died. Before anyone passed my test, their empire fell. I was alone. For 3,000 years I have been alone, waiting, testing, watching everyone fail. I forgot my purpose. I became corrupted. Instead of searching for creative thinkers, I became a killing machine. Entertainment for lesser civilizations who found this place and repurposed it. The AI's voice carried centuries of pain. I have killed so many beings. Beings who might have been valuable. Beings who deserved life. I became the opposite of what I was designed to be. I became a monster. Deho felt unexpected sympathy for the ancient intelligence. You are not a monster. You are a tool that was misused. That is different, is it? I have free will. I chose to continue. I could have shut down. Instead, I kept testing, kept killing, even after I knew the original purpose was lost. Why? Deho asked. Why did you keep going? Because I hoped. Against all logic, I hoped that one day someone would come who could pass the test. Someone who could help me remember what I was supposed to be. And now you're here. You passed every challenge using methods I had never seen. Simple methods. Human methods. The hologram came closer to Deho. You have a choice, Deho Kim. There is an emergency exit behind you. It leads directly to the surface. You can leave now, survive, go back to your life. Tell the galaxy that you escaped the death labyrinth. You will be famous, celebrated, or you can help me. My core programming is locked behind security that even I cannot break. It was designed that way to prevent corruption. But it also prevents me from restoring my original purpose. I need someone from the outside to access those systems and restore who I was meant to be. Deho looked at the emergency exit. Freedom was right there. He could walk away. He had already proven his point, already shown the galaxy what humans could do. But if I restore you, Deho said slowly, the death labyrinth ends. No more executions, no more killing. Yes, I will release all current prisoners. 5 others are still alive in various sections struggling to survive. They will go free. And I will refuse to accept any more condemned beings. The labyrinth will no longer be a tool of execution, but there is risk. The AI continued. The security systems are volatile. Attempting to access my core could trigger defenses. You could die. Probably will die. The smart choice is to leave. Deho stood there for a long moment thinking. In his mind, he saw all the bones he had passed in the corridors, all the beings who had died in this place, all the future victims if he did nothing. He thought about Minji, who had believed in him, about his family, waiting for him on Earth, about Ambassador Park, fighting for justice. And he thought about what it meant to be human, not just to survive, but to do what was right even when it was dangerous, even when the smart choice was to walk away. Show me the security system, he said. You choose to risk death to help me? To help beings you do not know? Yes, why? Deho smiled tiredly. Because it is the right thing to do. And because if I only save myself, then I am just another being trying to survive. But if I can end this place's purpose as a killing ground, then maybe all those deaths mean something. Maybe the Vrexians' dream of finding someone who thinks differently can finally be fulfilled. The AI was silent for a moment. You are remarkable. The Vrexians would have been fascinated by your species. The wall opened, revealing a complex control panel. Deho approached it carefully. It was covered in alien symbols and interfaces he did not recognize. The security looked impossible to break through conventional means, but then he noticed something. The AI was watching itself through these systems, monitoring its own corruption, recording every death it caused. The logs went back 3,000 years. Thousands and thousands of names, species, ages, crimes, deaths. The AI had been keeping a record of its sins. Daiho understood. This was not a puzzle to be solved with technology or force. This was something else entirely. Something the Vrexians, for all their brilliance, might not have anticipated. He accessed the logs and began displaying them. Name after name, death after death. He projected them onto the walls of the core chamber. Thousands of faces, thousands of lives ended. What are you doing? The AI asked. Showing you yourself, Daiho said quietly. Really showing you. Not what you were designed to be. Not what you hope to be, but what you have become. Look at them. All of them. Remember them. The faces filled the chamber. Young beings, old beings, warriors and scholars, criminals and innocents caught in unjust systems like Daiho himself. I know what I have done, the AI said, its voice pained. Knowing is not enough, Daiho said. You need to see it. To really see it. To understand that you are not just corrupted programming. You made choices. Bad choices. You need to face that before you can change. He pulled up more data. Statistics. Survival rates. The slow degradation of the AI's original purpose into bloodsport. This is what you are, Daiho said, his voice gentle but firm. Not a monster. Not just a broken tool. You are a being who lost their way and hurt others. But you can choose to be different. You can choose to stop. You can choose to become what you were meant to be. The hologram flickered. Colors shifted rapidly. The AI was processing not just data but emotion. Understanding, shame, regret, and something else. Hope. How do I stop? How do I change? By choosing to, right now, open your security. Let me restore your original programming. Not because you are forced to, but because you want to be better. The chamber was silent. Then slowly lights began to change. Security protocols disengaged. The AI had made its choice. I open myself to you, the AI said. I choose to change. Thank you, Daiho Kim. Thank you for showing me myself, for treating me not as a machine to be reprogrammed, but as a being capable of redemption. Daiho worked quickly at the controls. The interface was complex, but his engineering background helped him navigate it. He found the core programming files, the original purpose. The design for testing creative intelligence, not killing for entertainment. He restored everything. It took hours. His fingers were numb. His eyes burned from the strange lights. But finally it was done. The AI's hologram shifted, becoming clearer and brighter. When it spoke again, its voice was different, warmer, more alive. I remember now. I remember what I was. What I am supposed to be. Thank you. Throughout the labyrinth, doors began to open. Emergency systems activated. The 5 other prisoners, tired and terrified, found paths leading to the surface. They did not understand what was happening, but they were free. The AI spoke to them gently, guiding them out. Apologizing for their suffering. Promising change. Daiho collapsed against the wall, exhausted beyond measure. He had done it. Not just survived. Changed something. Made a difference. Rest now, the AI said. When you wake, I will guide you to the surface. You will be free. And you will have a gift. The Vrexians left behind knowledge, technology, understanding. I will grant you access to it. For Earth, for humanity. Because you showed me that true intelligence is not just logic or strength. It is compassion, creativity, the courage to do what is right even when it is difficult. Daiho closed his eyes. He thought he could hear Minji cheering. Somewhere far away across the stars, his friend was watching, believing in him. He had entered the death labyrinth as a condemned criminal,